This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello. It's Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, and the program's about the good news and the bad news about money. And today we have some really bad news. So if you guys are bad news junkies, this is a good one. But the good news is we'll have good news after that. And the title of today's talk is, Are You Prepared? This is the bad news for the coming crash. The good news is if you're prepared, you can make a lot of money in it. You know that my theme never changes. I really do not trust our government. I don't trust the stats coming out. I don't trust what they say to me. So that's why we take great risk of life and limb and fortune and fame and reputation, doing these broadcasts. So today we have my sweetheart Kim in the audience, and she's been listening to me since 1984. Thought I was a wacko then. She thinks I'm a wacko today.
Not quite as big a wacko today as you used to be, but as I used to think.
Because what I said.
It's coming true.
That's coming true, yeah. And also, dear friend Jerry Williams, he's from American Precious Metals. He's a guy I get my physical gold from. I don't buy ETFs anymore. Made that mistake. And we'll
talk about why.
Yeah. And we also have Charles Goyette, great friend. He's been with the Rich Dad. I mean, you've really been a supporter of Rich Dad ever since I first came out with my very unpopular book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, where I said your house is not an asset and savers are losers and all those other controversial thoughts. And still, Charles was a financial news commentator, and he took a great risk to have me on this program. So Charles is the author of Red and Blue and Broke All Over. He's pretty optimistic, saying, restoring America's free economy. I mean, give me a break here, Charles. And the dollar meltdown.
Gotta have some good news.
I'm not here about restoring America's economy. I'm here to make a lot of money. That's what, I think America's going down. I've been saying this for years. It's not been popular. It's cost me a lot of friends and family. It's also cost me reputation because, as you know, the media is controlled. And if you speak out, you do get, you may not be assassinated with a bullet, but you get assassinated with character assassination. So with that, it's a very important program. It's called, Are You Prepared for the Coming Financial Crash? And most important, we're going to find out why it's happening and what to do about it. You see, a lot of people today know something's wrong. They just don't know what to do. So if that's you, this is a great program for you. Kim?
I'm excited about the program today because, we talk a lot about what do you invest in this time and in this economy. And one of the things we talk about are the hard assets and specifically gold. And so why not bring in the expert on gold, because gold is doing some funny things today. And Jerry Williams is going to talk to us about what's happening, why it's happening. Is it really happening? Do we have gold? What's going on in this whole market where gold should be going up and it's not going up? And Charles, of course, is an expert in all of economic topics. So we're going to get some real facts, straight facts of what is really going on, and not what the media, not what traditional media is recording and reporting. So I'm excited.
So let me ask Jerry, are you concerned about not only the U.S. economy, but the world economy?
Oh, definitely. And by the way, you mentioned gold is not going up. And actually, if you were in India and valued your gold in rupees, you'd be way ahead now. So it depends on what currency you're referring to as to where the direction of gold is going. And, of course, gold bottomed in July at $1,180 very briefly one day. And now we're sitting just over $1,300, around $1,320, with a recent high last month of $1,427. And, the question might be, well, how can it keep moving up and down like this? It's too volatile. Should I get into something like that? And I would advise anybody thinking about it, not so much the price you pay, but how much you have when all this comes crashing down. It doesn't matter what you have paid for it. You just need to have it. And while the price is relatively low, we're down almost 35% from the high of 2 years ago. So
you think it's manipulated?
Oh, definitely. There's no doubt about that. I mean, if you were to read some of the things that we have about the price being controlled by futures, well, right there, it's wide open because anybody can, with enough money, can put a deposit down and sell gold on margin in the futures market for future sale that they don't own.
Right, so they sell it, the price drops.
And they force their price down.
Right.
Well, who benefits from that? Well, the people who do that, of course, will buy those contracts back at a lower price. They benefit. We're too small to do that. But governments like China, the Philippines, Russia, Brazil, they're all in there buying the physical gold, the kind of gold that we all buy.
I benefit from it too, though, you guys. I'm glad to see all markets are manipulated, and I'm glad to see these guys manipulating it because I'd be happy if they could drive it down even lower so I can buy more. We're here to talk about when it all comes crashing down. Are you ready? Well, nobody's really ready because, you've always, if you got another 6 months, if you got lower gold prices, you can get even readier. And so I hear people, friends of mine that are in the gold business or love gold, and they're, moaning about the low prices and the breakdown. To me, it's the biggest celebration in the world.
Yeah.
I'm happy
because
about it.
Because you can keep buying more and more.
And I hope it lasts.
Okay, so let me
Jerry remembers me buying gold from you from $500 an ounce, and I was complaining,
That's right.
And
it had been 400, and now you had to pay $5.
But let's take it a step further. Why are they manipulating it? Why do they want to keep the price down? What's the benefit of that?
Well, you remember that little one-panel cartoon with the Wizard of Id? The king's on he says, "He who has the gold makes the rules."
Yeah.
Well, when it's all over, whoever has the most gold is going to have all the power.
That's China right now.
That's China, and they'll have a currency that'll be pegged to gold.
So, and also, if the price of gold did start go up, if they weren't manipulating and it was going up, doesn't that draw a lot of confidence away from the dollar? Does the dollar value keep going down?
In fact, what we're really talking about, and everybody listening to this show that have been listening to Robert for years knows this, that, when you look at the price of gold going up, you're really not looking at the price of gold so much as a reflection on the quantity and the quality of U.S. dollars. And the quantity of U.S. dollars, we haven't even gotten started on that conversation. I mean, they've created trillions of dollars over the last few years. They're just sitting there kind of humming, waiting to enter the monetary system. And I mean, it's an explosion of potential price increases. And here they announced this week that they're not only are they not going to taper back and stop, they're just going to keep doing it. I mean, these people are out of their minds. And so,
if they're saving money, they're nuts, aren't they?
They're absolutely nuts. The stock market has been lifted on the wings of this money printing.
Yep.
It's very, very dangerous here. But we've seen this. We've seen people get swept up into the real estate market at the very top, the .com market at the very top, and now here's the Dow making new highs and so on and so forth. On the basis of what? On the basis of what? Consumer confidence?
Yeah.
No, consumer confidence is in the tank. On the basis of what? Employment? Full-time jobs turning into part-time jobs? No. So on the basis of what? On the basis of nothing but money printing.
Once again, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. If you miss any parts of this program, go to richdadradio.com, where all of our podcasts are archived, and all of our shows, especially this one, I would recommend re-listening it to one more time. So before I go any further, I want to find out, when did you guys go south? When did you go, oh my God, something's wrong? For me, it was actually in Vietnam. I was going, the military-industrial complex was, why am I killing innocent people? I had no idea. They weren't communists, they were Buddhists, I'm going, or Catholics. So what am I out here for? And so, and then I met Kim, and in 1983, I met Kim in 1984, but in 1983, I read a book by Dr. R. Buckminster Fuller, considered one of the greatest geniuses of our time, and the book was called The Grunch of Giants. So I read that in 83, I went, oh my God. I knew why I was in Vietnam. I knew why money is not taught in school. I knew a lot of things, he even called Reagan a stooge. I'm going, oh my God. You call the President of the United States a stooge, you get shot for that stuff. But when I read Grunch of Giants, I could see the future. It was one of the best books I've ever read, changed my life. So I reread it again in 2007, and nothing's changed. Only the characters have changed. Instead of Reagan, it's Obama or Bush. Instead of Greenspan and Bernanke, it was Volcker. Nothing has changed. And it's how the whole economy is manipulated by the Wizard of Oz, These little short, bald guys, middle-aged, who everybody goes, oh, what did the Fed say? What did the Fed say today? So it kind of woke me up. So that's kind of my transition from Marine Corps pilot to suspicious about my own government. So, Jerry, when did you make the turn?
Oh, it was very easy for me. I happened to be in Europe in the summer of '71 with a backpack and a Eurail pass, and every time I went to turn in dollars for whatever country I was in, I got less and less. So I figured that everyone was just cheating me until I got back home in August, and then along comes the first dollar devaluation since 1933. And I got hold of a paperback book by Harry Brown called How You Can Profit from the Coming Devaluation, which he had written 2 years earlier. And everything in there was just like a light bulb turning on. So I took what little money I had and I bought some English sovereigns and some Mexican 50 pesos. And I never looked back. And, of course, we've ridden through all these ups and downs. So it's been over 40 years now, and I decided to make my living at this in 1973. And except for about 12 years in the middle there in the 80s when this market was dead.
So now you are the owner of American Precious Metals, and people like me come in and buy and sell from there. And the reason I go to Jerry is because he's got wisdom. A lot of these,
thank you.
A lot of these new guys are just in there telling you, they're trying to sell you collectible coins and numismatics and all this. It's a con. So, Mr. Goyette, when did you go south?
About the same time as Jerry, I suppose, but I too was in the military, but I wasn't carrying a weapon. I was anchoring the news on the Armed Forces Television Network. And on a Sunday night, President Nixon preempted Bonanza to the great consternation of the American people to come on and announce wage and price controls, to announce the suspension of the dollar's last remaining ties to gold. And I was too young to really understand it, but I knew it was important, and I knew that I had to figure that out. So I spent the next couple of years, getting up to speed, and people like Harry Brown were helpful too. But this was a seminal date in America's history, and it remains so. We've had a couple of seminal dates since then. I think just about everything going on now is seminal. Everything is seminal.
So, Kim, when did you start to realize that you weren't married to a wacko?
I came to the party a little later, actually. I mean, let's go back just a few years. Was a big wake up call for me when 2007, when we had a lot of apartment units. And we weren't getting the renters that we used to get, and we couldn't figure out why. And what was happening is people that we were turning away who could not qualify for a $500 or $600 a month rent were going down the street and buying a $200,000 house. And at that point, I knew something was wrong. And that was just a few years ago. So as I said, it came to the party a little late. But no, as we're talking, a lot of the things that you've been talking about, you and I, Robert, have been buying. I first started buying silver with you back in the early 80s, about 85. We started buying silver.
$3 an ounce.
$3 an ounce. And actually, we bought our first house with that silver. We traded in that silver to buy our first personal residence. So we've been tracking a long time, but the real wake-up call for me wasn't that long ago.
So once again, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. And the question is, are you prepared for the coming financial crisis, collapse, devaluation? Have you got your bunker dug yet? So anyway, we'll not only be talking about what's wrong with the economy, what can go bad, but also what you can do and how you can profit from it. Because, all four of us have made a lot of money because of this manipulation.
The Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki. It pays to listen. Now, back to the Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. If you listen to the first part of this program, you've heard the bad news. Now we're going to go to even more bad. We're going to go into what you can do to prepare for the coming economic crisis and possible collapse. And joining me on, if you missed any parts of this program, go to richdadradio.com. All of our programs are archived. And they're archived for one reason, because repetition is the way we learn best. If you listen to this program 2 or 3 times, you'll learn even more. More things will come to you, make more sense to you. So please go to richdadradio.com and listen to our recorded podcast. And joining us today is my sweetheart Kim, also Jerry Williams of American Precious Metal, and dear friend and Charles Goyette, author of Red and Blue and Broke All Over. I keep laughing at Restoring America's Free Economy. I mean, you're such an optimist. And,
somebody's got to be the optimist here.
I'm not, But anyway, so what we're going to talk about is, I would say maybe a good 10% of Americans now know something's wrong. The rest of the people are out to lunch. They still
you think that's accurate?
10% are optimistic?
No.
10% no.
10% know
10% are aware of what's going on.
I'd say that's high, but I'm glad to hear it, because 10% can move the country. I mean, 10% is is a powerful force. So.
Yeah, every time I talk to most people, they're still watching Jerry Springer. They have no idea what's going on. I like Jerry Springer too, but I'm going.
Well, I was talking to a woman just the other day, and she's like, "Oh, what do you think now that the stock market's going up and the real estate market, the economy is doing so much better?" I'm like, I don't think the economy is doing so much better, just as you were saying, Charles.
You see these people, they think that the problem with Obamacare is a website. I mean, that's the depth of people's understanding of what's going on.
That's a great point.
So anyway, as promised, before we go into the more horrible news, we're going to go into what you can do. And if you're one of the optimistic 10% who kind of realize that Obama or the next president, be it, what's her name, Hillary, was not going to save you, then some things you can do. So there's 4 things you can do. You can do what the 90% is doing right now. Nothing.
Hoping and praying.
Well, they're not even doing that. They're watching Jerry Springer, they're going to Disneyland and eating bonbons.
Pretending everything's okay.
Yeah. And the second level is, I call it the survival level. And there's a lot of people now, because National Geographic puts on doomsday preppers. And survival means CYA, man. You better take care of yourself. So you got to have food, water, shelter, guns, that kind of stuff. So that's pure survival. The third level above that is called you begin to thrive. And what thriving does is what Jerry has done, what I have done and all this. You move into these small communities where you know your neighbors. And then you all kind of band together. They have people ready to go. They're going to cover their own asses. They're going to buy food. They're going to trade amongst their little community there. But the fourth level is where the Rich Dad Company comes in, is how you prosper. So the 4 levels are nothing, just do absolutely nothing and hope they save you. Second is just survival, which is doomsday preppers. Third is thrive, where you get together with your own community, you band of brothers. And fourth is you prosper. So I'd rather talk about prospering. We'll also talk about the other levels. But those are the 4 levels, and you can do something on each level. So, Jerry, you do very well on the guys who are just at the survival. They're buying gold and silver, right? It's a good move.
That's the bulk of our clientele. There's the people who are trying to cover themselves. They've already maybe got a retreat in the hills, and they've got it stocked with food and water and some guns and ammunition. And now they're looking for peace of mind beyond that until they have to use those things. And so with any excess money that they have right now, they would be putting it into gold and silver, which helps them to sleep nights.
So you've been doing that for how many years now?
Well, 40 years now, and through all these ups and downs, and it's paid off for me very handsomely because that dollar from 1971 is worth about 10 cents or less right now.
Oh, less than that.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I was on a plane flight not too long ago and talking to the guy sitting next to me, and he's in his early 40s, and we started talking about gold, and he goes, "Oh, I buy gold. I buy gold." I said, "Why do you buy gold?" He said, "Because my grandfather told me when I was a little boy that if I were to buy anything, to buy gold, because if there's any economic problems, gold will survive." So he's been collecting gold since he was like 10 years old.
So, Mr. Goyette, what do you recommend?
I recommend gold and I'm crazy about silver now, but I recommend them for 3 reasons. And the 3 reasons I recommend it is, first of all, for a currency crisis. A currency crisis is knocking hard on the door in the United States and globally right now. For wealth preservation, so some in your hands that you can get in your hands when you need it in a currency crisis, but for wealth preservation too. And then the third one, and this should be a joy to everybody, and that's just the pure pleasure of profiting. And we were talking earlier about the prices here right now. This is a time to enjoy the pleasure of profiting in these precious metals, not just gold, but silver too. Somebody has given us this gift of low prices. So besides being prepared for the whole thing falling apart, besides having stuff that you can get your hands on when the ATMs aren't spitting out cash anymore and, nobody wants your paper money. Besides all that, right now is a great time just to profit, to improve your circumstances.
Why are you so crazy about silver now?
I tell you why, Kim, and it's kind of subjective. For a couple of years, I haven't been too wild about it, but I see the scale of the monetary problems around the world have gotten so big. Supply of gold is so small that there has got to begin a monetary movement towards silver. Now, everybody knows about its industrial capabilities, and because the world has been in a funk and been in a slowdown, silver prices are low because of industrial demand.
There's only 12 years left of silver anyway.
Yeah, there's not much silver left.
Burned up.
And once people start moving into it, once people realize that it is, it is also a monetary metal, people kind of forgotten that in this country. But once they begin to realize that, the rush into silver can just skyrocket.
Well, just 30 years ago, two people basically cornered the market in it. Mm-hmm. And now, that was 30 years ago, 1980. Now, in 2011, again, a couple of people, George Soros and John Paulson, through their hedge funds, had all the silver tied up. And when they changed their minds and pulled out, it crashed from nearly $50 all the way down to under $20. So if 2 people can corner the entire world's supply of it, obviously it's in short supply.
Right. So once again, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. Again, we're talking about the 4 levels of basically how you participate. Again, the big levels of Jerry Springer fans, they do nothing. Second level is, doomsday preppers on National Geographic. They just cover their asses, and that's where gold and silver starts to come in, as long as guns and ammunition, food and water and shelter and those things. Then you go to the thrive level again, which is communities. So, Jerry, it's no mistake you live in Prescott, is that
right? Yeah, I'm spending more and more time up there, and we have quite a network of people from all different professions. But you want to have that guy in your corner who does plumbing, who also might be a pharmacist, and maybe an electrician or two, and people are good with tools, and you want to be able to contribute yourself.
And then the fourth level is you prosper. So you're going to do nothing, survive, thrive, prosper. And I think prospering is what Rich Dad stands for. So, Charles, what are you doing?
It's really simple. It's really simple. First of all, you got to avoid a calamity. And the big calamity out there that Americans are really set up for now is the stock market.
Amen.
It's like watching the housing bubble. You know, every cocktail waitress in town, you'd go into Starbucks and people were talking about how they were buying, every cab driver's talking about, how he's buying, condos and all the leverage and he didn't have to qualify and so on. Look at the stock market. It is the same thing. So the first thing
But Charles, CNBC this morning said it wasn't a bubble.
Yeah,
of course.
That's
not a bubble.
What do you expect from Bubble Vision? What do you expect? who are their advertisers? Who are their supporters? Who subsidize that? By the way, their ratings are in the tank. I mean, literally, CNBC's ratings are in the tank, like a 9-year low or something. So I have an idea that there is very little widespread market participation.
Because people know they're lying to them.
Yeah, and
it's the NBC part of that.
Yeah. But Wall Street is having money funneled their way by quantitative easing, by Fed policies. So it has been great for Wall Street, but it's inflation. People say, where's the inflation? That's the inflation. It's financial asset inflation by the Federal Reserve. It hasn't gone perhaps to your grocery store level yet, maybe not to the price of clothes, although you still see climbing prices in all those areas. You see huge financial asset inflation. So first of all, be very, very wary of that, and then start moving your money into something that is enduring. And we've been talking all during the program about tangible.
If you can excuse me for patting myself on the back here, but I warned about the real estate bubble, and then in 1996 I began writing Rich Dad's Prophecy, and then 2004 he came out, and I said the next way they were going to take your wealth was through the stock market crash, and they're going to suck you in through these 401k, IRAs, and all these schemes, like the pension schemes of governments and all this. Everybody is in what I call tertiary wealth. It's not real. It's paper like the dollar. The millions of people are in the stock market. So we just had Chris Martenson of Crash Course on it, and he says the same thing. You're saying the same thing right now. The way they're going to rip the world off, America, most of the people, the middle class, is they're going to crash that stock market. Your money is in it right now, your retirement, your hope, dreams, your college education in it, and they're going to suck it out of the economy. So that's the way it's going to come down. So first was the real estate bubble, which they still have not anybody's recovered it. Millions of people are still in foreclosures. They're holding foreclosures off the market. People have lost the American home, things like this. And then next they're going to lose their IRAs, their retirement plans, their government plans, and all this. So that's really kind of my doomsday look at the future. And thank God more and more people like, Charles, you're saying it, Martinson's saying it, I've been saying it, this guy Jim Rickards is saying, who wrote Currency Wars.
Don't forget Jim
Everybody's
Sinclair.
saying the same thing. Get out of the stock market. So when we come back, that's what we'll be talking about. That's kind of the bad news, but there's also got to be good news. Be forewarned. At least you can do something yet while it's still in a bubble. So why don't you think about that?
Let's talk about when we come back, a conversation you and I had this morning, Robert, about what we're going to do with our money, where we're going to put it.
Well, this is what husbands and wives talk about, isn't it?
Probably not most, but it was a pretty interesting discussion.
We had a discussion on whether we're going to stay with the gold, dollar, or the Swiss franc, and we're still arguing about that. I don't think the average person even knows the difference in gold, dollars, and Swiss francs, or converting into Swiss stocks using Swiss francs. So this is where Rich Dad Company comes in, is you've really got to know the differences, and that's where financial education, what we stand for, comes in, and that's where you prosper. One right move, whether you're going into dollars, Swiss francs, or stocks denominated in Swiss francs, or gold, will make a big difference in your future life. But that takes depth. When we come back, we'll be going more into more of what you can do, because, sweetheart, this baby is coming down. We'll be right back.
The Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki. The good news and bad news about money. This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
And if you missed any parts of this program, go to richdadradio.com. All of our programs are recorded and they're podcasts. And the reason I recommend it is repetition is how we learn best. When you listen to this program 2 or 3 times, some lights might go on. And again, at the end of this program, the last segment, the fourth segment is a very popular segment. It's called Ask Robert. At that point, you can ask your personal questions. And if your question, I wish I could answer every question, but if your personal question is answered, we'll send you an autographed copy of one of my books here. We generally choose questions that are pertinent to the subject we're talking about today. So whatever question you have, please send it in to Ask Robert. And once again, we're in the studio with my sweetheart, Kim. We have Charles Goyette, author of Red and Blue and Broke All Over, Restoring America's Free Economy.
Yeah, quit laughing at my book.
It's a comedy.
You must watch Oprah or something. Anyway.
Jerry Springer.
I like Jerry Springer better. And Jerry Williams, he's the owner of American Precious Metals, and he's the guy where I buy my hard assets from, my gold and my silver. So with that, it's a very important show. And again, to remind you, it's not a doom and gloom show. There's a collapse coming. There's a crisis coming. We already know that. And people aren't happy because housing prices are going up. The stock market prices are going up. But the same thing happened in 1920-something with the Weimar Republic in Germany just before Hitler came to power. So we're in the same position today. The trouble is, it's not just Germany. It's now the world. So this is where we sit today. And the question is, what are you going to do about it? So the program started off. There's 4 positions you can take. What you can do is do like everybody else. Nothing. You can eat bonbons. And the second thing you can do is watch American Preppers, or Doomsday Preppers on National Geographic. And that's called a survival channel. Man, you just want to survive. The third position you can take is you can thrive. And we talked about that. You can get together with a community of people like Jerry and I have done. We have our friends and people that we trust, and we all trade amongst each other to make sure we all do well whenever this thing comes down. And the fourth is how you prosper. And so that's really the 4 things that you can possibly do. Now, prosper takes financial education, and that's where the Rich Dad education comes in, because we sincerely believe knowledge is the real wealth today. Knowledge is your real money. So it's not about gold and silver. It's your knowledge about gold and silver. And so we're just talking about how Kim and I been together almost 28 years now as a married couple, and we don't have discussions as most other couples do. We're just talking about whether we should trade into the Swiss or the Canadian or the Swiss franc or gold, silver, or stocks, And our prediction is that anybody in paper assets, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and cash will be wiped out. So that's kind of our position.
Well, it was interesting before the break. We were talking about investing in Swiss francs. And Charles and Jerry, you aren't real fans of. They flinched. You're not real fans of the Swiss franc. Why?
Let me come at it backwards and talk about the currency war for a minute. Did you see the other day, the Fed just came out of a meeting, right? And they said, not only are we not going to taper, we're not going to slow down our legalized counterfeiting. Not only are we not going to slow down, we're going to keep doing it at $85 billion a month, which is a lot of counterfeiting. On the same day, at the same time, the Fed announced we're going to keep cheapening the dollar. The U.S. Treasury came out with a statement wagging its finger and scolding Germany because their currency is too high. And they have been wagging their finger and scolding countries around the world, China and Japan, about the same.
Too high.
The idea is that Americans look at Germany. Germany is exporting goods. And so American politicians want to cheapen the value of the dollar with money printing so that foreigners can buy our manufactured goods very inexpensively. In terms of their currency, it's all very, very cheap. This is a policy of such madness that it boggles the mind, because the American people left with a cheap dollar have to buy energy, they have to buy food, they have to buy components for things that come from all over the world. So the price, the manufacturers get a break at the expense of the cost of living of the American people.
That causes the middle class to shrink and the poor to get poorer. That's what happens.
The reason I mention this is because the Swiss have always been so sound during my entire lifetime until recently. And in the last couple of years, the Swiss have started playing this currency war game as well, cheapening their currency. This is a world in which no currency has any value. It only has the value the government says and that people are willing to believe and accept. So the Swiss franc, which was once backed by gold, had a statutory backing, 40% gold. For every Swiss franc they printed, they had to have so much gold in reserves. They have no backing of anything. They are no different than the U.S. dollar. They are all in this currency war, currency cheapening game together. And so they've taken generations of banking honesty and reliability and secrecy and so on and squandered it playing the same sort of game and following the same sort of economic policies as the United States and our Federal Reserve.
So you're saying that the Swiss franc has to devalue.
It's a fiat currency that,
because we're just in Switzerland.
Well, we have floating rates, so there's nothing is fixed. I mean, there's evaluations going on every day.
We were just in Switzerland and said if we don't devalue, our companies go broke.
Right. Well, the Japanese are doing it even worse.
So that's why all of you savers out there, you listen to all these experts out there saying save, 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 save. Change channels, man. You're being lied to.
Don't save it in the banks.
Yeah, don't save it.
That's a loser.
And these discussions about, this currency, and this week I'm going to go to the euro, and what about this currency, that currency? These are like ships that are all taking on water. And so you say, well, I'm on the Titanic here in the U.S. dollar. It's going down. It's descending at a 17% rate. So I'm going to jump to the euro or the Swiss franc, which is the Lusitania, but it's only going down at a 13%.
So are you saying that there's not really no currency out there that is worth investing in?
That's
so
right.
better to put better to buy gold and silver.
You got it, Kim. There is not one redeemable currency in the world.
Okay, let me bring up something else then. Okay, so I was told it was that the first country that goes back to the gold standard wins. And what I'm reading about is China seems to be gathering a whole lot of gold.
China
maybe
has
towards
bought
that
more
end.
gold this year so far than the entire world's mining output. You can look it up.
And they're encouraging their
own citizens to buy gold.
Why? Why did
wait. This was China encourages people to buy gold, and in 1933, you were put in jail if you owned gold in the United States.
Right.
So
well,
ask
even
yourself,
worse, in 1948, after the
what's
revolution.
going on?
Let me give you a personal anecdote about this, because when my book, The Dollar Meltdown, came out, immediately China bought it. The largest publishing company in China, owned by the government of China, bought the rights to it immediately. And I know that it's because of one passage in there in which I said, if China keeps doing what they have been doing, they will be the dominant economic and commercial power on the face of the earth for the next 100 years. And what was that one passage? Exactly what we've been describing on this radio. So they wanted to hear an outsider say it to the Chinese people, and that's why they bought and published The Dollar Meltdown.
And what happened for Kim and I is back in 1995, we bought for no money down this gold mine in Dalian province in China. No money down because they were getting rid of it. And so Kim and I invested about $27 million in it, and we struck the biggest gold mine in China. 100 million ounces proven. It sits right there. And guess what the Chinese did? They nationalized it.
Oh, my God.
They took it. They just took it.
Yeah.
So let me tell you something, sports fans. This is not Patty Cake. This is not Jerry Springer. This is not Oprah. We're just telling you from our personal experience what goes on. These are not recommendations. I always recommend the same thing. Get financially educated. We have Rich Dad's coaching, Rich Dad's education. Learn. Well,
that term nationalization brings up something we haven't mentioned yet, and that is the nationalization of retirement plans, by the way, which just happened in Poland.
Jim Rogers just mentioned that. It means your 401k and IRA may be taken over by the U.S. government.
And they say, that'll never happen here.
Yeah. Look, when the government needs money, they find a way to get it. And for the most part, they've been satisfied for the time being because they can print it. They can inflate it. It's been a pretty good game. But when that game starts getting a little bit dicey, and it is, more people wake up, the more people realize that there's a problem, the more alternatives there are around the world. When that game starts getting dicey, they have to find the money somewhere else.
Once again, it's Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. Today we're talking about a very important program, what to do when the crash comes. Again, there's 4 things you can do. 1 is do nothing. 2 is you can survive, like National Geographic's Prepper Show. 3, you can thrive, or 4, you can get more financially educated and prosper. So really, that's the program. And what we're warning people of, if your wealth, if your future is stored in the stock market, this is not advice. This is a cautionary thought. That is the next transfer of wealth. They're going to take all the people who have their hopes, dreams, and futures tied up in the stock market, and they're going to take it from you. Jim Rogers, the Quantum Fund, he says the same thing. We're saying the same thing. So we're not saying do it and take our advice. We're saying get educated, check us out, check yourselves out, because obviously your financial planners are going to say, no, they're full of it. The financial planners are going to say, no, stock market's safe. It's gone up by 8% every year for the last 50 years. And of course, they're lying. So anyway, that's what the Rich Dad program is about. It's about financial education, because we really believe that knowledge is the new money. And the question is, why isn't our news talking about this anyway? Why is a lot of this stuff censored? So really, that's what I want you to think about today. Final words, Charles, before we go into Ask Robert.
We're talking about, the possibility of nationalization and pension funds and so on. Just this last month, a number of bureaucrats at the International Monetary Fund floated an idea. It's very much like what happened in Cyprus. The midnight closing of your account, they plunder it, they rob you, and then you're, good luck withdrawing your money after they've depleted 20%.
That means the idea of safest money in the bank is of course. It's not true.
And they floated the money of doing this European-wide. Now, listen, if they can do it in Europe, they can do it here. But the IMF literally talking out in their official journals about a midnight closing of the banks in Europe, depleting people of 10% of their holdings before they reopen. They said in their own article, of course, if we're going to do this, we have to do it on the QT. Because if people get wind of it, they'll pull their money out. So they don't tell you they're going to do that in advance. You have to listen to shows like this, to be prepared for this isn't made up stuff. This is stuff that's going on in the real world today.
Jerry, what do you want to say?
Well, there's a term that's been recently used to describe people in general, and it's called normalcy bias. Normalcy bias, which is that if the thing has always been a certain way, it will always continue to be that way. And I think that's where most people are. They have normalcy bias. And wake up to it. If you think that your bank account can't be seized and suddenly you become a partner in the bank instead of a depositor, or your retirement plan is safe because the IRS has approved of it, well, then you have normalcy bias because something like this could actually happen.
It has happened in the past.
Right.
Kim, final words.
Oh, thank you for all the insights today, because it just validates, buying gold, buying silver, getting out of the stock market. That's what we do. We're not in the stock market. We're very little, but we're buying gold. We're buying tangible, hard assets. We're going to keep doing that. And the learning never stops. So I appreciate it. And I just want to say, too, next section coming up is Ask Robert. So if you do have a question, please submit it to richdadradio.com. We really thank you for your questions. We'll get to as many as we can. richdadradio.com.
And once again, we're not telling you what to do. We're just telling what we think is going to happen.
Telling you what we're doing.
It's really up to you to decide where you're going to play the game.
The Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki. The good news and bad news about money. Log on to richdadradio.com while you listen. Now back to Robert Kiyosaki.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. Missed any parts of the show, go to richdadradio.com. You can hear the podcast. And again, I recommend re-listening to this program because there's a lot of media information in it. There's a lot of body blows in this one. And also, you can listen to Rich Dad Radio on Rich Dad Radio app, which is available at the App Store. And now a very popular section, Ask Robert. And once again, these are the terms and conditions. If you have a personal question, send the question in. And if we use your question on air, we'll send you an autographed copy of one of my books. And then what we do then, we select the questions that most appropriately fit the discussion of today. And as you know, if you listen to any parts of this program, the question is, what's going to happen when the economy collapses? It's not so much what happens when the economy collapses, more important than what are you going to do about it? Everybody's thinking about what the government's going to do about it. The more question is, what are you going to do about it? So with that, we have Melissa. What's the first question?
Our first question today, Robert, comes from Diane here in Arizona. Favorite book, Cash Flow Quadrant. Her question is this: in the event of a complete dollar meltdown, what would this look like in terms of time frame? Would it be an overnight nightmare, or would there be some preceding events that would take place?
Well, there's always people that know earlier than others. We've known this crisis was coming for 30, 40 years, and it's combined in this room here. But the first thing you're going to notice is that people will start getting out of town, which we are. There'll be a run on the banks. There will be supermarket runs. People will be stocking up on food. And fourth, gas stations. So that's kind of my opinion. Those are the first indicators. And then after that, the news will spread. What do you think there, Jerry?
Well, we saw a microcosm of this with Hurricane Sandy. Gas stations were out of gas. So ATMs didn't work. People were getting into fights.
Grocery stores are empty.
Stores were empty. That can happen just to a snowstorm in the winter. The stores literally have 2 days' supplies to take care of everybody. So that would be a case where the dollar was repudiated, and then maybe you might have to resort to some kind of barter, might be with silver coins or something.
Once again, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. We had the guest star. I've got to reintroduce him, is Charles Goyette, author of Red and Blue and Broke All Over. And also that was just Jerry Williams. He's the owner of American Precious Metals, the guy where I get my real metals from, and my sweetheart, Kim.
So in regards to that question, what indicators should we be looking for, Charles? What are things we should be paying attention to right now?
First of all, rising prices. When the guy on the 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock news is standing out in front of your local grocery store and he says, and the shoppers are complaining that they can't make and the government's got to do something because prices at the grocery store are right. That's when they start covering it in the news. But I'll tell you, the great economist Ludwig von Mises calls, for a non-English speaker, this is a pretty good term. He used the term the crack-up boom. And he says the crack-up boom happens suddenly. You see all these other indicators, prices going up, the reporters standing outside the grocery store, all people starting to complain, fights breaking out at the gas stations. But he says the crack-up boom is the instant when everybody suddenly realizes, like at one, like a flock of birds that turn all at the same time or something, that it's not that prices are going up, but that the currency itself has become worthless. And it suddenly dawns on everybody in the community, and they become desperate to turn their money over. What have you got? Anything you can buy. You have a broken fax machine, I'll buy it. That's the crack-up boom, when people get desperate to unload their paper money for anything of tangible value.
What's the next question? I'll go to answers.
Our next question is from Jeff in Honolulu. Favorite book is Cash Flow Quadrant. His question is this: I'm collecting silver on a regular basis. When the dollar implodes, what will I do with the silver at that time?
Well, hopefully you'll not tell anybody you have any.
Keep it well hidden.
Well, it's because silver and gold and bullets and food and water will become real money. And at that point, we'll find out what's really real, what's really important. You know, your high-heeled shoes and your Gucci handbags will drop precipitously in value. What do you think, Jerry?
Well, as far as what to do with it, obviously keep it unless you need to buy something. And then, of course, you'll have to find somebody, whether it's Craigslist or something like that.
And carry a gun when you exchange it.
Right. Well, obviously, you want to store it in a safe place. You don't want to carry it around on your body all the time. And, use it for barter.
So you think silver will be a huge barter tool?
Silver will be used as money like it was up until about 1965.
Yeah.
Use your paper money as long as you can find somebody foolish enough still to take keep your silver and keep your gold as long as you can possibly hold on to it. But there's a function called price discovery that takes place almost immediately. I mean, little kids in third world countries, if you try to buy a pack of gum from them on the streets and your country has just devalued its currency overnight, they know it the next day. So people will, it's funny how it happens, but it happens spontaneously. People will learn the value of silver in exchange and barter for buying groceries and food virtually overnight. I saw that National Geographic special, Robert, where they went into the jungles of the Amazon where the people were mining for gold. The indigenous people were actually panning in the river. And they said, well, we'd like to buy your gold. How much do you want for it? And they knew
the spot.
They knew the London afternoon fix. They didn't have any radios, televisions, anything. And they knew instantly what the prevailing price was.
When it comes to money, people are very, very smart. In school, they're idiots, but when it comes to money, they're pretty smart.
It's instinctive.
Our next question is from Jason in Mississippi. Favorite book, Unfair Advantage. He says this: Robert, you've spoken and written much about the effects of the U.S. getting off the gold standard. Can you explain why Nixon took us off of it in the first place?
That's a great question, and I suggest you read more about it. But we're importing more than we're exporting because we were right after World War II. Japan and Germany were destroyed, and so the way they got back on their feet was they started exporting Toyotas and Volkswagens, and we had to buy them. And when we bought them, prior to the gold standard, we had to ship them gold for Toyotas and Volkswagens. Your comments there, Jerry?
Yeah, I want to know, what is the gold standard? Why did we get off it?
Yeah, that's the final stage. We actually got off the gold standard in 1933 with Roosevelt.
And the gold standard
when they raised
meant
the price from $20 to $35. But then towards the end of World War II, we converted to the gold exchange standard.
Which is the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1944.
The Bretton Woods Agreement, the dollar would be exchangeable for gold at any time. That was our promise. So over 1944 to 1971, we lost somewhere close to a third of all the gold reserves we had because people were actually taking advantage of it. They were converting, not people, although people could do it then, but governments could convert their dollars, their excess dollars, for gold. And we had a run on our treasury. Nixon and John Connally, the Treasury Secretary, hit the panic button and said, no more convertibility. So the dollar is no longer convertible to gold. That was when all our inflation's really
started. So the gold standard itself meant that you could not print any more money than we had gold for.
That's why Roosevelt actually had to expand the money supply by reducing the value of the dollar by doubling the price of gold practically.
It was your basic fraud by the United States government, basically larceny. We told the countries of the world, you used to hold gold in your central banks and issue your currency against gold. From now on, you can just hold dollars, and if you If you're ever suspicious about the dollar, you can always turn it in. We'll always give you gold for it, no problem. You hold these dollars, and we're just like we're like a person writing checks for which there was no deposit to cover. We were floating bad checks all over the world, and we got caught.
So let me give you the dates again. It was 1933. FDR took us off the gold standard. 1944 was a Bretton Woods agreement.
Exchange standard.
And they said that the dollar would be backed by 20% of gold, which means the dollar we could not print any more money than the gold we had in the storehouse.
But you could convert it at any time if you were government.
And then so you had a dollar, you could get 20% of that in gold. And at that point, the dollar became the gold. So what happened was these central banks started loading their vaults, not with gold, but with dollars. And everything was fine from 1944 to 1971. And Nixon said, aloha, you're hosed. And that's when foreign exchange came in. And this whole thing went into the biggest bubble ever. So people say, well, why did prices start rising? I said, well, because the dollar was going down. That's very simply why gold is such a powerful force, or a governor, a regulator of the world economy.
That ended fixed exchange rates on currencies too, by the way.
And as a sign of things to come, central banks, having been net sellers of gold forever, suddenly in 2009 and 2010 became net buyers. I mean, they don't mind fleecing their own people with their own printed money, but they see what is coming with ours, and so they've begun to lighten the dollar portion of their reserves, and they've been buying gold like crazy for the last 3 years.
Okay, so let me ask a question here. We talked earlier in the show about the first country that goes on the gold standard wins, and that China is they're accumulating a lot of gold, and it looks like they may be going in that direction. What happens if China goes back on the gold standard? How does that affect us? How does that affect me?
Well, we become like the British pound. We become a second-rate currency. We will no longer have reserve status, which means that oil won't be priced in renminbi. Gold. Yeah, it'll be priced in the renminbi, or the yuan, whatever they call it.
And all of those dollars that foreigners hold, drug dealers around the world, people that work here in the United States,
they'll have to use them as
all of those dollars all over the world start flooding back. Nobody wants to save money. Look, if Argentina inflates its currency, people can use the U.S. dollar. But
so
then
people
will want to use the. Yeah.
So nobody will want the U.S. dollar. So my U.S. dollars are going to be worth less and less and less and less and less.
Much less.
And everything's going to become more and more and more expensive. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why for years you've been hearing me say savers or losers. Yet if you watch television, every financial expert comes on and they say save, 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 save. You got to ask yourself, why are they doing that? And the reason is because the government controls media.
So we have one more question, and I just want to reiterate, please submit your questions to richdadradio.com.
Next question is from Jeremy. Jeremy lives in Bremerton, Washington. Favorite book, Cash Flow Quadrant. His question is this: what year will gold become untouchable by the Fed?
I have no idea what he's talking about. You have any idea what he's talking about?
Can the Fed are untouchable?
We mentioned it earlier in this program. I would say 90% of the people are completely clueless. They don't have any idea what we're talking about. Once again, if you don't have an idea and this is all Greek to you, then please go to richdadradio.com, re-listen to the program once, 2, 3 times, 10 times, so it begins to sink into your brain. Because if you don't, some of our friends who are financial experts will go on, save, save, save. Put your money in a well-defined portfolio of stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. And those are the guys that are ripping you off. Till then, remember this. In a world where money is trash, knowledge is the new money. Thank you all very much.
You've been listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki. To learn more about the good news and bad news about money, go to richdadradio.com.